What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of World of Warships. The gamer tag that I use in this game is Kempf, and today I'm going to be looking at this ship right here, the USS Texas. It's a New York class battleship, Tier 5 premium for the United States Navy. And I paid $30 for this ship. She came with 3 modules, a whole slew of signal flags, and 30 days of premium time. It is money well spent. She is bristling with guns, and she is an absolute blast to play. So to start things off, we're going to look at all the different armaments that's on this ship, break down her stats, compare her to her sister ship, the New York, and I'll give you my overall opinion on it before we dive into some gameplay and the very illustrious history of this U.S. warship. So bringing the UI back over top here, we're going to first compare her stats, and that is with all the modules. The modules that I have on this ship are main gun battery modification 1, which is minus 20% to the risk of the battery becoming incapacitated, minus 20 to the repair time, and minus 20% to the risk of my magazine detonating, which is nice. Main gun battery modification 2, this one I bought. This wasn't the one that came free. The one that came free was plotting room, which gives me 16% firing range. I'm not super great with my accuracy in this game, so I didn't really want more range. This gives me 10% to my loading time and 15% to my traverse speed, which I find to be much more valuable. It also comes with a propulsion modification. I didn't really need that. I'd much rather go with the damage control, minus 3 to the risk of flooding and minus 5 to the risk of fire. So that's what I have on her. Comparing her to her sister ship, let's look at her stats here. 58 survivability, 73 artillery, 49 AA, 18 maneuverability, 34 concealment. Comparing her to the New York, 58, which is right on the money, 72, so it's just a little bit more firepower than the New York, 30 AA for the New York, compared to the Texas is 49, so the Texas has much more capable anti-aircraft ability. Concealment is not as great as the New York, only 18, whereas the New York is a 21. Sorry, that's maneuverability. The New York is a little more maneuverable. And concealment is a little bit better, 34 compared to 33. Survivability, we don't really need to go into that because that's the same number. Artillery, we don't really need to go on that because that's more or less the same number. She has 5 of these double-barreled 356 millimeter guns, 2 forward, 1 amidships, and 2 rear. Her secondary armament is 6 of these 127 millimeter guns. Most of them are located in the front of the ship, but we do have, actually I think they are all located in the front of the ship. Well, yeah. So that's it for the main battery. It's real bonus with this ship lies with its anti-aircraft ability. 32 of these 20 millimeter cannons located all over the ship. They are all over this damn thing, but the majority of them are located in the rear. We have 40 millimeter Bofors, 10 of them located all over the ship, and like I said, the majority are in the rear, and 10 of these 7.62 millimeter machine guns. I'm sorry, these are not 7.62 millimeter machine guns. I cannot read. These are 76 millimeter cannons, flat cannons. So like I said, a whole slew of anti-aircraft guns all over this ship. This thing chews up enemy planes like it's nothing. You're launching dive bombers against this thing, you're a fool. The Texas will absolutely chew up aircraft, as you will see later in one of the replays. As far as my captain goes, he's a very well-trained captain. I've been using him since the beginning of the game. I've chosen to outfit him with ship survivability, minus 15% to repair time, fire extinguishing, and recovery. Artillery expert loader, 50% less reload time, which is awesome. It comes in very handy if you have to switch targets in the middle of combat. I never really take expert marksman because 0.7 degrees second faster traverse speed is just insignificant to me. I elected for fire prevention, minus 7% to the risk of fire. That added with the fire control system Gives me, what is that, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% less chance of catching fire, which is always nice. And if you're playing a battleship, you're going to have to go for vigilance, plus 25% to the acquisition range of torpedoes. That's absolutely critical. You need to take that. I am currently stacking up points for me to go with this. High alert, minus 10% to the reload time of my damage control party, just to help me fight fires faster. I could go for 4 points just for that. For survivability expert, it gives me plus 400 HP for each ship tier, so you can times that by 5. That's 2,000 more hit points. That is awesome, but I'm going for that instead. So that really about sums up the armaments that the ship carries. Compared to the New York, I found it to be a very similar ship, because I mean it's the same ship of the same class pretty much. For some reason, I like the Texas better. Its only real downfall is the fact that it is a battleship. It is slow and it is cumbersome, and you know, you'll be detected at extreme ranges and engaged by things that can punch holes in you, such as tier 6 battleships. But against ships of your tier and ships of lower tier, this thing is an absolute monster, and we're about to see why. So right off the bat, we're going to look at how this ship performs against things that are not quite in its tier, which is what I was talking about earlier. Against ships of its own tier and below, it's a beast, but against tier 6s and especially tier 7s, it does struggle. And I do love this new feature that they just put in recently, weather effects. It persists through the early goings of the battle. I think it's about 30 seconds into the battle. The rain effect will continue, and then it slowly passes away. The sun comes out, and it's gorgeous. So we'll go into cinematic mode and take a look at this. And there you can see the sun starting to come out, and the clouds are starting to part. It's a beautiful, beautiful effect, and I really love that they put that into the game. So without further ado, I'll stop rambling about the gameplay and everything, and we'll go into some pre-recorded ramblings of myself talking about the illustrious history of the USS Texas and its military career. The USS Texas, designated BB-35, is the second ship of the United States Navy to be named in honor of the U.S. state of Texas. It is a New York-class battleship, out of which only 2 were built, the New York and the Texas. The ship was launched on the 18th of May, 1912, and was commissioned on the 12th of March, 1914. Soon after her commissioning, the Texas saw action in Mexican waters following the Tampico incident. What is the Tampico incident? Well, I'll be glad to tell you. The Tampico incident began as a minor incident involving U.S. sailors and Mexican land forces loyal to the dictator General Huerta during the faction wars of the Mexican Revolution. The misunderstanding, however, led to a breakdown in diplomatic relations between the two countries. The misunderstanding in question was the detainment of an American gunboat crew. The problem was quickly resolved, but Rear Admiral Henry Mayos sought to further inflame the situation by demanding an official disavowal of the act by the Huerta regime and a 21-gun salute to the American flag. President Wilson saw this as an opportunity to put pressure on the Mexican government, which he viewed as undemocratic. On April 20th, Wilson placed the matter before the U.S. Congress and sent orders to Rear Admiral Frank Fletcher, which commanded the naval forces off the Mexican coast. He instructed him to land a landing force at Veracruz to seize the custom house as retaliation for the incident. The U.S. occupation of Veracruz resulted in widespread anti-American sentiment among the Mexican residents. U.S. warships, including the Texas, were used to evacuate U.S. nationals from the Gulf Coast as well as the west coast of Mexico, taking them to refuge centers in San Diego, Texas, and New Orleans. As a result of this anti-American sentiment, Mexico maintained neutrality during World War I, refusing to support the U.S. and Europe, all the while continuing to do business with Germany. The U.S. threatened to invade in 1918 to take control of the Tampico oil fields, which the Mexican government threatened to destroy if the U.S. set foot on their land. In 1916, Texas became the first U.S. battleship to mount anti-aircraft weapons and the first to control gunfire with directors and rangefinders. Upon her return to active duty with the fleet, Texas resumed a schedule alternating between training operations along the New England coast and off the Virginia Capes, and Winter Fleet tactical and gunnery drills in the West Indies. That routine lasted just over 2 years until the U.S. entered World War I in 1917. I'm going to stop the history lesson for a minute. Have you noticed what's about to happen here? The friendly cruisers that are escorting me are turning tail and heading north, and I am continuing to sail south, straight into the jaws of the enemy, as if the fire on deck wasn't a big enough clue. I'm about to run smack dab into this enemy Cleveland, which is a Tier 6 cruiser, bristling with guns. He's backed up by another Tier 7 cruiser that I can't quite see yet. He's around the bend of the island, and a New Mexico class battleship. Things are about to get very, very painful. I'm telling myself at this point, if I can just sink this Cleveland without taking too much damage, we'll be okay. I can regroup with these cruisers and maybe just hold off the enemy long enough for my team to make some sort of an effective counter push into B. Nice hit going in on the Cleveland there. Just a couple more salvos is all I need to sink this guy, unless I can get a Citadel pin. But he is a tier above me, so he does have sufficient enough armor to stop most of my AP shells from going in. So another shot, and he's just on an inch of health left. That shot, I really wish it would have put him under. Look at this massive volume of fire coming in on me. Waiting for this reload. Another 9 seconds. Comes all the tracers from all these damn cruisers. Oh my god. One more shot should be all it takes to sink this son of a bitch, and then I can get the hell out of here. But I've had to use one of my damage repair parties. There he goes. Cleveland is now sunk. And oh my god, there's a lot of ships. There's a lot of hurt coming my way. Time to leave. One of her first duties during World War I was the training of armed naval guard crews for service on board merchant ships. One of the gun crews trained aboard the Texas was assigned to the merchant vessel Mongolia at the beginning of the war. On the 19th of April, the Mongolia sighted a surface German U-boat, and the gun crew trained aboard the Texas opened fire on the U-boat, averting an attack on the Mongolia and thus firing the first American shots of World War I. In August, the Texas made way to the New York Navy Yard. She completed her repairs on the 26th of September and got underway for Port Jefferson that same day. During the mid-watch, however, the following day on the 27th, she ran hard aground on Block Island. The captain, Victor Blue, and his navigator were confused about the shorelights and were paying more attention to the minefield at the opening of the Long Island Sound. They made the turn at the wrong time and ran the ship aground on the island from the bow of the ship all the way aft beyond midships. For 3 days, the crew tried their hardest to lighten the ship to get her off the land, but to no avail. On the 30th of September, they had to call in tugs, which eventually pulled her free. However, the hull damage she received dictated that the ship make a return voyage back to the Naval Yard for repairs, which delayed her departure with Battleship Division 9, bound for the British Isles in November. Captain Blue was a protege of Navy Secretary Joseph Daniels, so he was never court-martialed for the incident. Instead, the Navy Department held his navigator entirely responsible. It's funny how that works. Speaking of ships running aground, watch this. I think that's a Murmansk down there. I'm not sure. He was trying to capture C, and I don't know if he ran aground or what happened, but just hitting him with fire, and again, just leaving him on an inch of health. That's a Tier 5 premium, yeah, it's a Murmansk. Tier 5 premium Russian ship, straight to the bottom of the ocean. He did manage to capture C, but it cost him his life. And now we really are in some deep shit at this point. We are running pretty much neck and neck with the enemy as far as kills go. Look at that guy in chat asking why is it CVs who always look at the map and never seem to know when to move. It's just one of life's great mysteries, my friend. But the enemy are capping B, and things are not looking too great. C is pretty much a death sentence for anyone to sail down there, especially me. I'm using my last damage control or damage repair party here. And as I was saying, you know, just going up against ships tiers above you, they will put a hurt on you. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about it. especially without cruiser support, as I am now pretty much alone on this flank with an understrength Omaha. So my only real option at this point is to try and make a dash for B here, maybe interrupt the cap or protect the carrier. That's really the only thing left for me to do. I'm not smelling a victory here, not smelling one at all. Nothing really of note happened to the Texas during World War I. She operated with the British Grand Fleet as part of the 6th Battle Squadron with the other ships of Division 9. The German fleet was increasingly tied to its bases at the Jade and Ems rivers, so the American and British ships settled into a routine schedule of operations with little to no hint of actual combat. That state of affairs lasted until the end of hostilities on the 11th of November 1918, when the armistice was signed. On the 21st of November, she sailed with the British Grand Fleet to meet the surrendering German fleet. During the interwar period, she received numerous refits and upgrades. Following her overhaul, she resumed duty with the Atlantic Fleet early in 1919. On March 10th, she became the first American battleship to launch an airplane. Later, in 1919, the Texas's captain, Nathan C. Twining, successfully employed naval aircraft to spot the fall of shells during a main battery exercise. The results were that aircraft-borne gunfire spotters were significantly more accurate than shipboard spotters. In testimony to the Navy General Board, Lieutenant Commander Kenneth Whiting attested that the increase in gunfire effectiveness with air spotting was likely to be as great as 200%. As a result of these first experiments, the Navy would add float planes to all the fleet's battleships and newer cruisers. And here we are now entering the closing stages of this battle. It is just me and the carrier, and I'm pretty much being hunted down by their enemy fleet here. We have a Tier 7 German cruiser bearing down on us that I just can't seem to kill. We have a little destroyer prowling around our aft section here that I just can't seem to keep spotting. And the only thing left to do is just keep pouring fire and hope that God I can just get one more kill before I succumb to this fire, as I have a minute and 14 seconds left on my damage repair party. I'm not going to be able to put that fire out. Shots out onto that German cruiser. This should do it if I can get some good hits. Nice hits, but again, it's a Tier 7 cruiser. Its armor is just too thick. My guns cannot do enough damage. I have a fire burning now, 2 fires burning on my ship. More incoming fire, and that's pretty much all she wrote for the USS Texas in this battle. Soon after World War II broke out, the Texas began operating on the Neutrality Patrol, which was basically an American attempt to try and keep the war out of the Western Hemisphere. Later, as the U.S. adopted a more active role, ferrying Lend-Lease material across the ocean to England, the Texas took part in escorting convoys across the ocean. In February of 1941, the U.S. 1st Marine Division was activated aboard the Texas. That same month, Admiral Ernest J. King hoisted his flag as the Commander-in-Chief of the reformed Atlantic Fleet on board the Texas. That same year, while on patrol in the Atlantic, the Texas was stalked by a German U-boat designated U-203. The U-boat lost to Texas, and nothing more became of the incident. The first major combat operation that the Texas was part of during World War II was a little operation called Operation Torch. If you're not familiar with Operation Torch was basically the code name given to the invasion of North Africa. Pretty significant. The Texas was part of the Northern Attack Group, and its objective was the port of Leyte in French Morocco. The warships arrived off the beaches near the village of Mehdia early in the morning on the 8th of November and began preparations for the invasion. The Texas transmitted Lieutenant General Dwight D. Eisenhower's first Voice of Freedom broadcast, which was asking the French troops under German control to not oppose the Allied landings in North Africa, to not resist them. When the troops went ashore, however, the Texas did not go into action immediately to support them. At this point in the war, the U.S. military was still trying to figure out this whole amphibious landing thing. They didn't know the value of a preliminary bombardment. So the troops went ashore attempting a surprise landing. As the Texas entered the battle early in the afternoon, the Army requested fire from her on a Vichy French Army ammunition dump near the port of Leyte. One more gunfire mission was provided on the 10th before a ceasefire was called on the 11th. Shots going in, dealing a very nice citadel penetration on that poor cruiser. Unfortunately, I did not get the kill, but nevertheless, sending him to the bottom with my teammates and providing some very well-needed fire support. This battle's going pretty good so far. We're in a good position to capture B, it looks like. We already have A captured. The enemy's putting up a fight down here at C, but the presence that we have here, I'm judging to be stronger than them. This is a Wyoming I'm engaging right now, a Tier 4 American battleship. It doesn't appear to be upgraded, so he's going to have a hell of a hard time dishing out damage to me, and that really is about the only threat down here. We have a lot of destroyers, so I'm not sailing too close. I'm trying to stay close to B here. It looks like we have a friendly destroyer coming down to support us, so it's a matter of just laying down fire and continuing to do what I'm doing. Here's a little fun fact for you. On board the USS Texas during Operation Torch was a young news reporter by the name of Walter Cronkite. Some of you may have heard of him. He reported on the events of Operation Torch, and on the return trip back to the U.S., he was granted special permission to be flown off the ship with an OS-2U Kingfisher once they reached aerial range of Norfolk, Virginia. He was granted this permission because his rival was on another ship, the USS Massachusetts, heading back to the U.S. as well. Cronkite was carrying the first uncensored news report to be published about Operation Torch. His experience on board the Texas launched his career as a war correspondent and a journalist. This ship is just full of history. This is awesome. We have the Wyoming, and what appears to be a New York. Oh no, it's another Texas. Dishing out fire on the Texas and the Wyoming. I'm not sure who I hit there. I think I hit the Wyoming. But engaging two battleships there at the same time as I'm sailing into B, I'm going to swing this back around and try to make a play for back down south, because the Allied ships I have down here are starting to be thinned out, and there's a nice big clump of enemy cruisers and battleships there in the southwest that I feel like dealing with. We have some type of Japanese ship. I'm not sure that's a Tenryu or something. That could be German. I'm not sure. I can't tell. It doesn't really matter. He's been sunk. And now this right here is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about this ship's anti-aircraft capability. We have some torpedo planes coming in behind us, and in my opening salvo, I already shoot down 1, 2, and 3. That fighter, or that torpedo bomber squadron, is just being wrecked by 4. That's 4 plane kills now. That's almost the entire squadron as I'm taking fire from that Texas. Just decimating, absolutely decimating that torpedo bomber squadron as they sailed across the stern of my ship. They have no idea what the hell even hit them. Fire going out on that New York or that Texas, dealing very good damage on him as I continue to sail north. I'm choosing now to just completely abandon the south. I have some ships down there. I'm going to try and swing it around and get some covering fire on them. But it's looking like making a play for A is going to be really our only option, and just try to regroup. We have our carrier that's in the southeast corner that is just, I guess, not looking at the map. I don't know. And look at this now. More dive bombers sailing overhead as our anti-aircraft guns just knock them out of the sky, knocking 3, 4 of them out of the sky as that fighter squadron chases them down. That's 5. That's the whole squadron. That is 6. 6 planes shot down now out of that whole squadron. That's amazing. Shots going in on the Wyoming now, dealing big damage to him. 4,000 damage dished out with only 2 hits. And now we have some decisions to make. But first, let's go back to our history lesson. The next major operation that the USS Texas would take part in is Operation Overlord, the invasion of northern France. Throughout 1943, Texas carried out the familiar role of convoy escort, making numerous transatlantic voyages to such places as Casablanca and Gibraltar and the British Isles. That routine continued into 1944, but on the 22nd of April that year, when completing one such mission, she remained at the Clyde estuary in Scotland and began training for the invasion of Normandy. During the next 12 days, the Texas carried out many 14-inch gun firing exercises with the British battleships HMS Ramillies and the Rodney. The firing was done in conjunction with Royal Air Force airplanes acting as spotters. On the 29th of April, the Texas, the Nevada, and the Arkansas relocated to Belfast, Northern Ireland. There, final preparations were made, including the removal of the airplane catapult and the ship's OS-2U Kingfisher observation planes. As the final preparations for Operation Overlord were getting underway, General Eisenhower came aboard on the 19th of May to speak to the crew. On the 31st of May, the ship was sealed and a briefing was given about the upcoming invasion. For this invasion, the Texas was designated Bombardment Force Flagship for Omaha Beach in the Western Task Force. Her firing area of Omaha was the western half, supporting the U.S. 29th Infantry Division and the U.S. 2nd Ranger and 5th Ranger Battalions at Point du Hoc. At 0300 hours on June 6, 1944, Texas and the British cruiser Glasgow entered the Omaha Western Fire Support Lane and into her initial firing position some 1,200 yards offshore near Point du Hoc. At 0441, as part of a combined total U.S.-British flotilla numbering 702 ships, including 7 battleships and 5 heavy cruisers, the initial bombardment commenced at 0550 against a site of 6 15-centimeter guns atop Point du Hoc. When Texas ceased firing at the point at 0624, 255 14-inch shells have been fired in 34 minutes with an average rate of 7.5 shells per minute. While the shells from the main guns were hitting Point du Hoc, the 5-inch guns were firing on the area leading up to the route to get inland from western Omaha. At 0626, Texas shifted her main battery gunfire to the western edge of Omaha Beach, around the town of Verville. Meanwhile, her secondary battery went to work on another target on the western end of Omaha Beach, a ravine laced with strong points to defend an exit road. Later, under control of airborne spotters, she moved her major caliber fire inland to interdict enemy reinforcement activities and to destroy batteries and other strong points further inland. And as many of you know, by noon, the assault on Omaha Beach was in danger of collapsing altogether due to the stronger than anticipated German resistance and the Allies' inability to get tanks onto the beach. In an effort to help the infantry, many of the destroyers almost grounded themselves, trying to provide fire support as they moved in closer. The Texas did the same thing, closing to about 3,000 yards off the water's edge, and firing with almost no elevation to her guns to clear the western exit D1 in front of Verville. Among other things, she fired upon snipers and machine gun nests hidden in the defile just off the beach. At the conclusion of that mission, the battleship attacked an enemy anti-aircraft battery located west of Verville. On June 7th, the battleship received word that the Ranger Battalion at Point du Hoc was still isolated from the rest of the invasion force and was low on ammunition and mounting casualties. In response, the Texas obtained 2 of the LZVPs that was used to land troops on the beach and loaded them up with provisions, ammunitions, medical supplies, everything you could think of for the Rangers. Upon their return, the LZVPs brought 35 wounded Rangers back to the Texas for treatment. Sadly, one of them died on the operating table. Along with the Rangers came a dead Coast Guard sailor and 27 prisoners, 20 Germans, 4 Italians, and 3 French. Later that day, her main battery rained down shells and death on the enemy-held towns of Fourmigny and Traverses to break up German troop concentrations. That evening, she bombarded a German mortar battery that had been shelling the beach. However, not long after midnight, German planes attacked the ships offshore. One of the planes swooped low, but successfully avoided the Texas's anti-aircraft fire. On the morning of June 8th, her guns fired on an Insigny, then on a shore battery, and finally on Traverses once more. After that, she retired to Plymouth to rearm, returning to the French coast on June the 11th. From then until June 15th, she supported the Army in its advance inland. However, it wasn't long before Allied troops were advancing past the range of her guns. Her last fire support mission was so far inland that to get the needed range, the starboard torpedo blister was flooded with water to provide a list of 2 degrees, which gave the guns enough elevation to complete the fire mission. With combat operations now beyond the range of her guns, on the 16th of June, the Texas left Normandy for England. And I hope you've been paying attention while I've been busy educating you in the Texas's involvement in Normandy, because I've sure as hell been busy trying like hell to win this game. The enemy is just too quick. These three destroyers are operating very well, recapping the points behind us. As I've sunken 3 ships, I've shot down 25 planes, and I'm educating my teammate on what it means to be a team player as he's trying to tell the enemy where our carrier is for them to go kill him because apparently he's not playing as a team. But nevertheless, this battle is still very close. It's anybody's game at this point. The enemy's ahead on points, but I'm heading south again to try and capture B, and it's going to be down to the wire here. After her tour of duty in Normandy, the USS Texas would take part in the Battle of Cherbourg. On the morning of the 25th of June, the Texas, in company with the Arkansas and the Nevada, 4 cruisers and 11 destroyers closed in on the vital port of Cherbourg to suppress the fortifications and batteries surrounding the town, while the U.S. Army 7 Corps attacked the city from the rear. However, while en route to Cherbourg, the bombardment plan was changed, and Task Force 129-2, built around the Arkansas and the Texas, was ordered to move 6 miles to the east of Cherbourg to engage the guns of the battery at Hamburg, a large shore battery composed of 4 240mm guns. Arkansas was the first to open fire at the German positions, while the German gunners waited for the Arkansas and the Texas to be well within range to return fire. The Texas was straddled by 3 German shells. 5 minutes later, Texas returned fire with a continuous stream of 2-gun salvos. The battleship continued firing her guns in spite of shell geysers blossoming about her and difficulty spotting the targets because of smoke. However, the enemy gunners were just as stubborn and skilled. A German 240mm shell skidded across the top of her conning tower, which sheared the top of the fire control periscope off. The remains fell back into the conning tower and wounded the gunnery officer and 3 others. It hit the main support column of the navigation bridge and exploded. The explosion caused the deck of the pilot house above to be blown upwards approximately 4 feet, wrecked the interior of the pilot house, and wounded 7. Of the 11 total casualties from the German shell hit, only 1 man died. The helmsman on duty, sadly. Christian Christensen was his name. Texas's commanding officer, Captain Baker, escaped unhurt and quickly had the bridge cleared. The warship herself continued to deliver her 14-inch shells and 2-gun salvos, and in spite of the damage and casualties, scored a direct hit that penetrated one of the heavily reinforced gun emplacements and destroyed the gun inside. It wasn't until later in the day that the crew discovered an unexploded 240mm shell lodged inside the ship. The shell crashed through the port bow directly below the wardroom and entered the stateroom of Warrant Officer M.A. Clark, but failed to explode. I hope that man didn't have anything important in there. The unexploded shell was later disarmed by a Navy bomb disposal officer in Portsmouth and is currently on display on board the museum ship. Throughout the 3-hour duel, however, the Germans straddled and nearly missed a Texas over 65 times, but she continued her mission, firing 206 14-inch rounds at Hamburg until ordered to retire. And in this battle alone, I seem to have fired 38 rounds, sunk 4 ships, shot down 25 planes, scored 3 citadel penetrations, and educated my teammates on what it means to be a team player, and sadly, it is just not enough. But hey, in defeat, you can find some measure of victory. Look at this, nearly 400,000 credits, 3,219 XP, 100,000 credits was made in just daily missions. But man, that is the perk of playing a premium ship. You earn yourselves a whole lot of XP and a whole lot of credits. It might have been a defeat, but I scored 2nd highest XP overall, and I was on the losing team. So that says something. Due to the damage she sustained, she was forced to sail back to Plymouth after the Battle of Cherbourg to undergo repairs. After those were completed, she began drilling for Operation Dragoon, the invasion of southern France. On the 16th of July, she headed for the Mediterranean Sea. She made a few stops at Gibraltar and Oran, Algeria, and then the battleship arrived in Taranto, Italy on the 27th of July. After she departed on August the 11th, she rendezvoused with 3 French destroyers off of Tunisia and then set course for the French Riviera. She arrived off St. Tropez, during the night of the 14th of August, and then was joined early the next morning by the battleship Nevada and the cruiser Philadelphia. However, there was heavy opposition expected, and that heavy opposition never came about. Landing forces moved inland rapidly, and fire support from the Texas was no longer required. So she departed the southern coast of France early on the morning of the 17th of August, and after a stop in Sicily, she left the Mediterranean and headed for New York, where she arrived on the 14th of September, 1944. Once she reached New York, the Texas underwent a 36-day repair period during which the barrels of her main battery were replaced. After that was done, she underwent a brief refresher cruise and then departed for the Pacific via the Panama Canal. The U.S. was busy, and the U.S. was busy with the Japanese, and they needed the Texas. She spent Christmas at Pearl Harbor and then conducted maneuvers in the Hawaiian Islands for about a month until she departed for the Ulithi Atoll. She departed Ulithi on the 10th of February 1945, stopped in the Mariana Islands for 2 days of invasion rehearsals, and then she set course for Iwo Jima. She arrived off of Iwo Jima on the 16th of February, and 3 days before the amphibious landings began. There, for 3 days, she pounded the Japanese defenses on Iwo Jima in preparation for the landing of 3 Marine Corps divisions. After the Marines stormed the beaches on the 19th of February, Texas switched to providing naval gunfire support for them. On-call fire, it was called, in response from the requests from the Marine units, which continued all the way through to the 21st of February. And although Iwo Jima was not declared captured until the 16th of March, the Texas departed much earlier, on the 7th, and returned to the Ulithi Atoll to prepare for the invasion of Okinawa. She departed Ulithi with Task Force 54 and arrived at the Ryukyu Islands on the 26th. Texas moved in close to Okinawa and began her pre-landing bombardment that same day. For the next 6 days, she fired multiple salvos from her main guns to prepare the way for several Army and Marine divisions to make their amphibious landings. Each evening, the Texas retired from her position close to Okinawa, but returned the next morning to resume her bombardments. The enemy ashore, as Iwo Jima, made no reply. The only offense received by the Texas was from air units. Several kamikaze raids were sent to harass the bombardment group. The Texas escaped damage during those attacks. On April 1st, after 6 days of aerial and naval bombardment, the ground troops went ashore, and for almost 2 months, Texas remained in Okinawa waters, providing gunfire support for the troops and fending off enemy aerial assaults. In performing the latter mission, however, she claimed 1 kamikaze kill on her own and claimed 3 assists. On the 14th of May, she departed Okinawa for the Philippines, and that concludes her service in World War II. On the 17th of May, the Texas arrived at Leyte in the Philippines and remained there until after the Japanese surrender. She returned to Okinawa toward the end of August and stayed in the Ryukyu Islands until the 23rd of September. On that day, she set course for the U.S. with homeward-bound troops embarked as part of Operation Magic Carpet. The battleship delivered her passengers to San Pedro, California on the 15th of October and celebrated Navy Day there on the 27th of October before resuming her mission to bring American troops home. She made 2 round-trip voyages between California and Oahu in November and a third in late December. On January 21st, 1946, Texas departed San Pedro and steamed via the Panama Canal to Norfolk, Virginia, where she arrived on the 13th of February and soon began preparations for inactivation. On the 18th of June, she was placed officially in reserve in Baltimore, Maryland. Throughout her long service life, the Texas earned many awards, including the Mexican Service Medal, the World War I Victory Medal, the American Defense Service Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 2 battle stars, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal with 3 battle stars, the World War II Victory Medal, and the Navy Occupation Medal. If you guys want to check her out, she is still surviving to this day. She is docked along the Houston Ship Canal near the San Jacinto Monument. She is the oldest surviving battleship to be honored in this way as a museum ship. She is 102 years old currently. Other battleships honored in this way are the Massachusetts, the Alabama, North Carolina, New Jersey, the Missouri, the Wisconsin, and the Iowa. She is worthy of respect, a lot of respect. She provided a great service for her country throughout her long life, and I was honored to make this video to commemorate her arrival in World of Warships. She's a really fun ship to play, and I give her my stamp of approval, that's for sure. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for sitting through this long-winded video. I hope it was worth it. I hope you learned something. Like, subscribe, all that bullshit. And as always, have fun doing whatever you're doing. Do it to the best of your ability. And I will see you when I see you. Take care.